Religion is the most powerful force in the world. The power of religion comes from stories that in traditional cultures the grandparent generation tells the grandchildren. These stories precede our criticality, our rationality, and shape the way our mind moves. The power they unleash in our own hearts and our own emotional and psychic life is immense.
The purpose of the giving of the Torah and the purpose of the development of the Jewish tradition, which is something that is not only for the Jews, but which the Jews ought to be able to share with the entire world, is to bring peace among the Jewish people, among all the peoples in the world, to bring peace between human beings and God.
When I left Canada to go to Saudi Arabia and study, it was to be of benefit to my Muslim co-religionists. It was to fulfill my vision of being a good servant of God. And instead what I see is that my fellow Muslims are obsessed with this question of Israel.
All religious traditions have this problem of how do they deal with those who are different from them, living among them, under them, or next door to them.
People in Asian countries, Asian Muslim countries, who have no concept of what Israel is, who have never met a Jew, are willing to go commit sometimes murder. For me, that has taken my religion off the course for which it was intended.
We can really not ask others to deal with some of the problems in their own tradition if we're not prepared to see that we have the same type of problems in our tradition.
The way both Judaic and Islamic traditions work is that the meaning we have for the text is a result of our reaching into the text repeatedly and through generations to find what is there but may not have been made evident.
The whole argument over Israel was never by the early Muslims and by the Quran seen as a Muslim-Jewish confrontation. It was only in 1967, after the Six-Day War, and the scholars took note and said, henceforth, this is going to be a war of religion, because the Arab nations saw that they could not work together in some sort of mythical Arab cohesiveness. And so Islam came not to be something that united them to be better citizens in God's eyes, but to be better supporters of a common cause against a common enemy.
So I may want to hear certain kind of stories. In fact, I probably want to hear a story that confirms all my prejudices, hatreds, insecurities, and anxieties. And to the extent I allow that psychological baggage, political baggage, to determine which stories I buy into or not, I'm failing my own responsibility as an adult.
The Torah has a mandate that is echoed in the Quran, that of steadfastness and patience and the belief in trying to do good. You see, tikkun olam is not only a Jewish concept. Coined in Jewish terms, yes. And by destroying each other, by fighting for a land, by blowing up others, this is no concept of tikkun olam. It is no concept of what the Quran says, al-amru bil ma'ruf, ordering to that which is good. Once we read that Quran and say to ourselves, you know, maybe others have politicized this message of the Quran, then there is the concept of negotiated peace.
You do not get people to open up to you, to attempt to seek you out, if you basically are attempting to, in effect, lay a guilt trip on them and telling them that the problem is theirs.
Somehow we need to put up front what we want to achieve. It's an untold story, and it's the most important story we can get across today, that Jews and Muslims are engaging one another, are encountering one another. If we're just angry Believe me, our religions will give us plenty of fuel to justify and act upon that anger. And there's a lot of angry people in the world. But if we want something other than to wallow in anger, if we're tired of continuing pain and suffering, self-inflicted and inflicted on the other, then we have to look for slightly different readings of those stories. I think that's where we are now.
This was how beautiful and pleasant it is when brothers dwell together in unity.